All right, let's dive into something pretty profound, shall we?
Hmm.
Today we're looking at the conclusion of Allan Kardec's The Spirits book. And not just any conclusion, but the third edition, translated by Darrell W. Kimball and Marcia M. Sayas. Now, you might think conclusions are just wrapping things up, but Kardec uses this one to lay out this huge vision for what Spiritism means, well, for everything.
Yeah, it's not just a summary. It's Kardec really pushing his readers to wrestle with the impact of Spiritism, especially for those who might be skeptical, like how it can change individuals, but society as a whole, too.
So we're getting a peek into the future, how Kardec imagined it back in the 1800s.
Exactly. He paints this picture of the world transformed by the spirit world, And right away, he uses this analogy comparing table turning to a pot with a steam-lifted lid.
What do you think he's going for with that?
Right.
It feels like there's got to be more to it.
It's clever, right? Because table turning was seen as, like, a parlor trick, just for fun. But he's saying, hey, that simple pot with steam lifting the lid, that led to the steam engine, which totally changed the world. So he's making a connection. Just like that pot had this hidden potential for massive change, so does Spiritism, even though people might dismiss it.
He's saying, look past the surface, past what seems simple, and you'll see this huge potential Spiritism has for how we see ourselves, the universe, everything.
Exactly. He's arguing that Spiritism, yeah, it might be associated with table turning and stuff, but it gives us these really deep insights into what's real, about the soul, our purpose, the big picture.
And he jumps right into that conflict between Spiritism and materialism.
Oh, yeah, he doesn't shy away from it at all. It's funny, he points out how materialists love reason and science, but they shut down anything they don't currently understand about the natural world.
So what's the biggest challenge materialism throws at the Spiritist view, would you say? And how does Kardec handle that?
Well, for Kardec, materialism's problem is that it's too narrow. It only focuses on the material stuff and totally misses the huge spiritual realm, which Spiritism is showing us through all this evidence from spirits communicating. And Kardec says this evidence is just as valid as anything from the material world. He wants materialists to be just as rigorous, to observe and analyze spirit stuff like they do with science stuff.
So it's not about just believing blindly. It's about investigating with an open mind, using that scientific approach.
Exactly. He's pushing for a bigger understanding of what's real, one that includes both the material and the spiritual. And that changes everything, he says. How we live, treat each other, how we shape the future.
Not just spooky stories then, but a whole different way of being, how we see ourselves and relate to others.
Right. And at the heart of it all is understanding we're not just physical, we're spiritual beings having this human experience. And Kardec thinks that's key to fixing the mess he saw happening in society back then, this moral crisis.
And about that, he claims Spiritism is the answer to that crisis, saying it promotes justice, love, charity by proving the soul and afterlife are real.
Now, this is where things get interesting. He's saying, without being sure about the future, without knowing our actions have consequences beyond this life, there's no real basis for being good.
So if this life is all we got, then why not just be selfish? But knowing we're eternal, that our choices echo beyond this world, that changes our whole outlook.
Absolutely. It makes living a life of love, compassion, justice, not just a nice idea, but essential.
And that's the key to a better society for Kardec.
Exactly. He believed that if everyone understood the spirit world and its laws, we'd naturally be more ethical, more compassionate. A world where people aren't just out for themselves, but striving for spiritual growth and helping everyone.
Powerful stuff, and feels super relevant today even.
Totally. Those challenges he saw back then, they're still with us. And what he says about reality, about being human, it's still valuable for figuring things out. And that transformation starts with each of us, right? Living those Spiritist principles every day.
He knew this massive change wouldn't happen overnight, though, right? Human nature isn't just going to become perfect suddenly.
Of course not. He was realistic about how tough it is to change hearts and minds. But he thought even tiny steps in the right direction by individuals, they can make a ripple, build up to a more just and compassionate world.
Like that saying, be the change you want to see.
Exactly. And for Kardec, that change starts by realizing we're spiritual beings, not just physical bodies. That's a whole new perspective, opens up all these possibilities.
He talked about the resistance he faced too, right? Different kinds of critics, their reasons. What do you think we can learn from how he saw those who push back against Spiritism?
It's crazy how relevant it still is today, He talks about the people who just deny the phenomena completely, others who are scared of what a spiritual reality means, and then there's the ones who think Spiritism's moral demands are, too much for them.
Sounds pretty spot on for how people react today to anything that shakes things up, especially about spirituality.
For sure. And the way Kardec responds is interesting. He doesn't try to force his beliefs on anyone. Instead, he's like, okay, if you don't like this, show me something better. A system that explains things as well gives the same meaning and hope that Spiritism does.
That's bold, saying if you got a better idea, let's hear it.
And it shows how much he believed Spiritism could stand up to scrutiny, that it makes sense to the head and the heart.
What strikes me about Kardec is he's so practical, not just ideas, but how to actually use them in life for individuals and the society.
That's core to Spiritist philosophy. Not just believing in spirits or the afterlife, but living it, turning spiritual knowledge into action.
So how does that look, both personally and on that bigger societal level?
Personally, he talks about how embracing Spiritism changes us from the inside. Less fear of death, better able to handle tough stuff, a real sense of purpose.
Sounds like a path to more peace, more resilience.
Exactly. And for society, he saw this world where love, compassion, justice, they become the foundation for everything. Our social structures, politics, everything. Individual change leads to a better world overall.
We can't skip over his thoughts on Spiritism and Christianity, especially why we need Spiritism if we have the gospel already.
It's a common question, especially for folks coming from a Christian background. Kardec's answer is, well, it's nuanced. He didn't see it as replacing Christianity, but making those teachings clearer, easier to understand, more relevant to the modern world.
More like building a bridge than creating a divide.
Exactly. He thought Spiritism gives this rational basis for the spiritual truths that Jesus taught, making them more appealing for people who might struggle with just taking things on faith.
Like meeting people where they're at, with evidence and explanations that can open them up to a more spiritual way of looking at things.
And that's so important in our age of reason and science. He knew you had to present spiritual stuff in a way that made sense to the modern mind, one that wants logic and proof.
Ahead of his time, bridging that gap between science and spirituality, which is still a struggle today.
Absolutely. And what he said is still so relevant. He got that human longing for meaning, connection, something more than just the material stuff. It's universal. It's timeless.
But even though he saw that common ground between Spiritism and Christianity, he also recognized the differences.
Yeah, a big one is the emphasis on reason and evidence in Spiritism. He was firm that it's not a religion in the traditional way, more like a philosophy, a science of the spirit world, built on observation, experiments, logical thinking.
So faith guided by reason, not blind faith.
Exactly. That's why it draws people who are skeptical of the usual religious stuff. It's a way to explore spirituality without giving up critical thinking or honesty.
And Kardec knew there could be disagreements and divisions even within Spiritism. How did he address that need for unity and understanding?
He stressed focusing on the core stuff that unites all Spiritists, instead of getting caught up in small differences. Tolerance, understanding, recognizing that there can be many paths to truth.
Powerful message, especially in a world that feels so divided and polarized. What would you say are some of those core principles he's talking about?
The essentials, according to Kardec, are believing in God, the soul, the afterlife, and the importance of love, charity, moral progress.
So he was setting the stage for a community that could be diverse in its thinking, but still united by those shared principles.
Exactly. And that's still relevant. The Spiritist movement is diverse, with different schools of thought, interpretations, but those core principles are the glue that holds it together.
Shows how enduring his work is. He understood that human desire for meaning, connection, something beyond just the physical, it's universal, it's timeless.
And he saw Spiritism as the way to answer that longing, to give us a framework for understanding our place in the universe, our purpose.
I want to go back to something he said early on in the conclusion about Spiritism explaining those big questions that bother us, especially about our future.
That's a huge theme for him, and why Spiritism clicks with so many people. It gives answers to those questions humans have always asked. Where do we come from? What's life about? What happens after we die?
And not just answers based on blind faith or guessing, but on evidence from communicating with the spirit world. Evidence you can examine, validate, analyze.
That's what's unique about Spiritism. It's not dogma, it's not doctrine. It's about finding truth through observation, experimentation, thinking things through, and using those truths to live a better life with more meaning, purpose, happiness.
Speaks to anyone who's ever wondered about life and death, what it all means, what reality is.
It goes beyond time and culture, speaks to those deep desires of the human heart.
To wrap up this part of our dive into Kardec's conclusion, I want to touch on the message from the Spirit of St. Augustine he includes. Why is that message so important in this final chapter?
That message from St. Augustine is like a powerful reminder of how unifying Spiritism can be. It's a call for tolerance, understanding, focusing on those core principles of love and charity that should unite everyone seeking truth.
So even with differences in how we interpret things, St. Augustine's saying we have a common goal to do good, live by God's law, and grow spiritually.
Exactly. And he reminds us that real progress, both individually and for all of us, comes from love, compassion, recognizing that divine spark in everyone.
A message of hope and unity, which we need so much in a world that feels divided and polarized.
Absolutely. And reminds us that Spiritism's real power isn't in phenomena or theories, but in changing hearts and minds, inspiring us to live more lovingly, compassionately, with more meaning.
So after all these ideas, what are the big takeaways from Kardec's conclusion to the Spirits book? What did he really want us to grasp?
I think the most important is that Spiritism is more than just cool stories or philosophy. It's a call to action, a guide to changing ourselves embeddled. Kardec believed that if we get the truths revealed through spirit communication, we can make a more just, compassionate, and enlightened world.
And he didn't hold back on challenging his critics, wanting them to really engage with Spiritism intellectually and morally.
Yeah, he was a trailblazer in exploring the spirit world, and what he found still resonates with people all over.
As we head into the last part of our deep dive, what's sticking with you the most from Kardec's conclusion? Something that'll stay with you even after we're done recording.
For me, it's the idea that Spiritism gives us a way to live with more purpose and meaning, knowing our lives go beyond this physical world. That changes how we see everything. Relationships, choices, goals, fears, hopes. It's a powerful reminder that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and this life is just one chapter in a much bigger story.
That's beautiful. Really gets at the heart of what Kardec was saying. Makes me feel a sense of wonder and responsibility. Wonder at how vast the spiritual reality is and responsibility for what we choose, how it impacts us, others, the whole world.
You said it perfectly. Kardec's conclusion to the Spirits book is an invitation to wake up to who we really are, embrace our spiritual potential, and live lives full of purpose, meaning, and love.
It's an invitation to start that journey of self-discovery and spiritual growth, and we hope our listeners will feel inspired to take it.
It really is. And going back to that steam engine analogy makes you think, what are WE overlooking today? What seems small now, but could totally change how we understand the world, ourselves, everything.
Good question. Kardec really believed in human curiosity, that we could figure out all these mysteries of the universe, both the physical and the spiritual. He seemed pretty optimistic about what we're capable of.
He believed in our goodness, that we could grow morally, intellectually, and that Spiritism could help us do that.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Kardec's conclusion, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from our conversation? What really sticks with you?
I think the biggest thing is that Spiritism, at its heart, it's a message of hope. It's saying you're not alone, you're loved, you have a purpose that goes way beyond this life. Knowing that, it can change how we live, make us more compassionate, find more joy, because we're part of something much bigger.
That's beautiful, and a perfect note to end on. So to our listeners, keep exploring Spiritism, dig into Kardec's work, find others who are interested, and never stop asking questions, seeking, growing. You never know what amazing discoveries are waiting for you.
And remember what Kardec said, the truth is there for anyone who really wants to find it. So keep searching, keep exploring, keep your heart open to all the wonders out there.
This has been The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time for another exciting exploration of ideas that matter.